3 Sermons of the Monk Odilo.
Sermon 1. On Saint Medard.
It's worthwhile, dear brothers, to remember how the place of Blessed Medard flourished over time with the excellence of worship and the progress of religion. Also, how fiercely his wrath sometimes erupted against the enemies of his servants. King Clothar of the Franks, who was devoted to the service and reverence of saints, did his best to fulfill the promise he made to the most holy man before his death. After moving his body, with great diligence, he gathered the necessary funds to complete what was offered either by royal luxury or by the generous contributions of the faithful. He began to construct a noble temple with the remarkable skill of expert stonemasons. Having laid the foundation with such craftsmanship, driven by keen intelligence, he would have completed it in a short time. Unfortunately, the common fate of death took him. He went to Tours to visit Saint Martin for prayer, pleasing him with devout prayers and gifts. He also visited nearby monasteries with heartfelt devotion, distributing gifts as seemed best, guided by the Holy Spirit. After returning to Gaul, he went hunting in the forest of Cochia, where he was struck by a severe fever and began to lose his strength. Then, brought back to the villa of Compendium, he passed away, having subjugated foreign nations to his rule. His body was brought by his servants in a funeral procession to the city of Soissons and was buried with appropriate reverence before the Saint of God in the same basilica he had begun but had not finished. He truly deserved such a burial, having anchored his mind so firmly in that place that even death could not separate him from what he held with singular affection in life. However, upon his mournful death, all of Gaul was filled with deep sorrow, and that excellent work was left unfinished due to the change in the royal scepter. Just as bad offspring imitate their evil parents and inherit their wrongdoings, good children from virtuous parents grow in all virtues, bringing praise to their family. Sigebert, the son of Clotaire, succeeded his father on the throne with the unanimous support of the Franks. He was a dedicated supporter of divine religion and a steadfast follower of the Christian faith. With a passionate zeal, he shared his father's love for God and completed the works of piety that had been halted by his father's passing. The monastery, notable for its remarkable design both inside and out, was properly adorned with the order and faith of the clergy. Externally, he expanded it with grants from his estates, elevated it joyfully, and advanced it with diligence. Then, in a desire to murder his brother, while plotting to besiege Chilperic in the city of Tournai with traps, he brought an end to both the rule and the life of his wife Fredegonde's schemes. The sword he intended for his brother turned back on him, and he died from the very place where he had blindly plotted against his own kin. Indeed, 2 young warriors from Terwan, pretending to elevate him as king, suddenly struck him with spears through his sides, and as they fell with him, they forced his unwilling soul to depart. His body, wrapped in precious garments, was brought to Lambers with great mourning from his people and was later buried with great honor next to his father in the basilica he had beautifully constructed. This noble royal building, remarkable for its nobility and renowned for its intricate construction, stood firm until Louis the Great assumed the paternal monarchy. When he took the throne, the inner courtyard of the same hall was demolished to its foundation, leaving not a single stone upon another in the entire structure. Long ago, the illustrious Caesar brought the relics of the blessed martyr Sebastian to this place, which meant divine power was readily available to heal the sick. Because of the growing crowds and the increasing number of people drawn by countless miracles attributed to the martyr, the prince decided to demolish the old building, as it couldn't accommodate the throngs coming from all around for such a spectacle. With the immense offerings, he began constructing a much larger temple, capable of holding everyone. It embodied the grace of virtues and displayed dignity and glory, surpassing all in elegance. This building, however, had been burned by the Marcomanni, losing much of its splendor. It was a disgrace to future generations, leaving only a vast heap of stones. This remains today, measured in 3 intervals, showcasing its vast size. Its dome is prominent, and it is remarkable in both length and width. Over time, as the place became renowned, Warambertus seized control after the death of the venerable Ansbert, who had been in charge of the monastery. Following the death of Dracius, the bishop of Soissons, Warambertus secured the bishopric from the king with money and the help of friends, without losing his former position as prior. He was a frequent visitor at court and highly influential among the king's household, thus effectively achieving his ambition. Leading both flocks, he cunningly kept a sly fox in his corrupt heart, ruling them more strictly with a sense of justice, over whom he had previously presided deceitfully in sheep's clothing. He was supposed to protect them from worldly obstacles, but instead, he constantly tempted them with worldly desires, leading to endless complaints that he should have addressed with justice. He took what they needed for sustenance and redirected it for his own needs, destroying the goods that a true priest should protect with virtue. Those who were slandered couldn't endure the damage and insults with patience, unsure how to resist someone whose heavy yoke they had accepted in their unfortunate subjection. The royal estate of Matwalis, known as Good Valley, not from Latin or British, but from its fertility and richness, stretches over the land and brings in substantial revenue. As it spreads across the vast land, it supports many who cultivate it. This estate was granted perpetually by King Sigibert of the Franks, a notable and righteous king of the past, to Saint Medard along with many other benefits. Because it borders the Seine territory and is far from Soissons, it was difficult for officials to bring expenses to the monastery. Thus, its annual revenues were sold each year, and the proceeds were distributed among the monks in various ways. Items like salt, honey, and other easily transportable utilities were purchased there, and many barrels were loaded onto carts and taken to the monastery. Warimbertus, noticing this, took advantage, arrogantly leading the loaded carts to his property, delighting his people. Those deprived of what was granted by divine favor were shamed and often sighed deeply from the bottom of their hearts due to harsh insults. Once, while the executioner was preoccupied with external matters, his brothers took advantage of his absence and boldly redirected the incoming supplies into their own storerooms. When he found out, he was very displeased and immediately became angry, threatening to punish such audacious behavior with a fitting sentence. Concerned, the brothers turned unanimously to prayer, engaging in a 3-day fast, constantly seeking divine help with prayers and tears. During this time, no voices were heard in the choir, only at the appointed hours did the lips of those singing move, as everything was conducted in silence and mourning, in line with the devotion excellently established by the Christian Church. This situation, however, became a seed of envy, hatred, and discord in the eyes of the tyrant, who found more grief where he should have found relief. Why dwell on it? Eventually, he returned to his position, seemingly to exact revenge on those who violated his twisted customs. Rising at dawn with a strong hand, he approached the place with an agitated spirit and mind. When his men knocked on the royal door, no one responded from inside. As the doors were tightly closed, everyone, led by the bold bishop, feared the threatened common destruction. Coming closer, he knocked repeatedly, forcefully striking the gates and shaking the bronze doors in anger. One of the caretakers, less cautiously, approached him with the temple keys. With the doors unlocked, the furious man entered, filled with rage. He immediately raised his right hand high and struck the head of the person opening the door so hard with a staff that the man was completely stained with blood, his face bruised and mouth disfigured, which was a great disgrace. In his sorrow, he sincerely cursed him, which divine mercy soon revealed with clear judgment. He did not escape unpunished for the excessively cruel treatment inflicted on the servant of God. As he arrogantly went to pray, he had barely bent his knee before the Holy of Holies when suddenly, by divine intervention, his innards burst through his bowels and spilled onto the floor. Just as he was devoid of piety, he undoubtedly remained empty of stomach, and his end showed that the life of the priest was far inferior to the worthiness of the priesthood. His body was thrown outside the temple's threshold, and the rest of his filth was also removed by the faithful service. He had a burial place in the cemetery he deserved, where his depleted body was interred. Therefore, shepherds of souls should fear that a worse punishment may envelop them someday, and they should learn to lead their subjects with discernment, lest the subjects lack the effect of salvation without discretion. Since it is exceedingly useful for a person in life to avoid excess, it is clear that they should manage discipline with this caution, so that fear restrains wickedness, and love promotes justice through exercise. In this way, the success of the subjects will advance, and the progress of the leaders will truly be enhanced, and everything will be in everyone, so that Almighty God may be equally honored by all. Church leaders should also remember not to become accustomed to allowing the sins of the people and not to seize their substance, for which they should, if necessary, offer their very soul. Earthly resources must also be distributed for the sheep of Christ, lest their own be taken away, by which bodies are nourished in the service of divine apprenticeship. Therefore, he who does not give earthly substance for what has been entrusted will never give his soul for the same, as one progresses from the smallest first to the greatest last, and no one grasps the greatest last unless they first practice the smallest first. The priests of God must always be informed by word and deed, so that even if there is one who brings forth good things, there is, consequently, no lack of those who strive to imitate. But he who plunders what belongs to others certainly loses the duty of a shepherd and, thus condemned, strays from the true path of truth. So, let those who are subject not be crushed by their subjection, nor let those in higher positions become overly elevated. The former should humbly obey like children, while the latter, acting as fathers, should give commands with moderation. If any leader handles matters differently, they are undoubtedly like Garimbertus, who considered the emotions of subordinates without the affection of love. A brief speech by the writer has highlighted the main deeds of Blessed Medard, striving to gather a unified collection with moderate brevity from various sources. His illustrious life was once confined to a narrow scope, with the signs of his virtues and the translation of his body almost obscured, written on humble sheets. Since Fortunatus's authority was concise and negligently regarded, displeasing to readers, its power helped the writer's works to come together and cohere harmoniously through the command of obedience. It seemed right to fulfill the duty of service at least through language, so that the praises of the blessed man, compactly joined and arranged with dignity, might be clarified and explained in a slightly more extended and clearer statement. He did not wish to detract from the man who long ago published the life of the same father in meter and strict speech, but what was briefly mentioned, this writer deemed it worthwhile to expand upon with the pen. What the accomplished order skipped in the narration, this new narrator endeavored to pass on to posterity for their knowledge, not distorted by his own comments, but truly inserted in the ancient records of the old ones. It seems reasonable then, brothers, to agree that we should strive to honor the merits of such a great patron with worthy praises. Although he has a house not made by human hands, but eternal in the heavens, he always had a more exalted temporary abode on earth. Just as he protects his people from the attack of invisible enemies, he often defends them from the assault of visible ones through the help of his intercession. He embraces those in the heavenly tabernacle with him, providing pastoral care to them in this present age. He indeed guides the family of God amidst the shipwrecks of the stormy ocean, ensuring that our ship is not seized by the storm of tempests or carried off by a cruel pirate into eternal plunder. This family was entrusted to him long ago for governance, as he says to his disciples, and thus to all the faithful. Who then is the faithful and wise servant whom the Lord has set over his household, to give them their measure of wheat at the proper time? Matthew 24:45. Hence the apostle says, each one according to the measure of faith God has assigned. Romans 12:3. Therefore, what Christ calls the measure of wheat, Paul refers to as the measure of faith, so it is understood that spiritual wheat is nothing other than the venerable sacrament of Christian faith. Therefore, brothers, where our treasure is, there also let our heart strive to be, so that we may yearn for the love of our heavenly destiny, to which we trust our blessed patron has already arrived. Thus, being joined with the eternal citizens, may he implore divine mercy for our sins, making him favorable to us, whose eternal glory he enjoys through continuous vision. To accomplish these things, may the only begotten Son of God extend the hand of his mercy, whose kingdom and dominion stand firm and endure, forever and ever. Amen.
Sermon 2. On Saints Medard and Gildard.
The glory of the holy confessors, dear brothers, deserves to be celebrated with worthy praises. Those who have always confessed Christ and given true testimony should be elevated to a title of honor. Even when they spoke little about him, they declared the greatest truths with unwavering spirit. In one sense, they earned the title of angels, and in another, truly archangels. As the apostle says, the temple of God, which is holy, is you. 1 Corinthians 3:17. They became a temple of God, undoubtedly the altar and rule of priesthood, on that table of the eternal King, offering sacrifices of appeasement and atonement through vows of holy confession. They often presented a pleasing sacrifice of human reconciliation to God. Because of this, they received the power and authority to bind and loose through the gift of virtue, so that what they decided by their judgment was rare in heaven through divine authority. For such merits, they are rightly elevated to the title of praise, granted by the King of Justice himself the privilege of intimate love for confessing his name. They truly love the Lord, whose minds are not overcome by wicked pleasures through consent, and they grow in love for him, not yielding to the hidden temptations that threaten. Indeed, they are passionately inflamed and are deservedly counted among the cherubim and seraphim in heaven, where they receive the reward of their calling, anchoring their minds in continuous contemplation. The peak of this perfection, which the blessed confessors sought to reach, was to desire nothing in this world but to long earnestly only for their Creator. Renouncing earthly desires, they completely crucified themselves to carnal lusts, so they might offer their bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God through reasonable service, as noted in Philippians 4:18. And because they did not wish to conform to this age but steadfastly sought to be renewed in the spirit of their minds, walking according to the inner man, as described in Romans. Inspired by the successes of the saints, they went from strength to strength. They constantly longed for him to whom they were devoted, as if they had taken wings like doves, allowing them to soar to heavenly places and find rest. They truly loved the Lord and followed his commands and precepts, ensuring that nothing could separate them from his love, even when faced with temptations. As truth says, Let your waist be girded and your lamps burning. Luke 12:35. How many burdens they took upon themselves, overcoming the excesses of their bodies. Without using iron, they endured a prolonged martyrdom in their bodies, achieving through suffering what the shedding of blood could not provide. Initially, food was scarce and drink even rarer, with moderation imposed on both, as if, in the end, they made sure that Venus remained untouched. Their faces grew pale from excessive fasting, and their unkempt appearance resembled the condition of Ethiopian skin. Their spirit remained steadfast in vigils, ensuring their minds, dedicated to God, were always present in prayer. They kept their waists girded, restraining physical indulgence through self-discipline, and held burning lamps in their hands, offering examples of light through good works. Since neither great chastity without good works nor good works without chastity is sufficient, they practiced both with discretion, ensuring the desire for praise did not detract from their true intentions. Thus, with their waists girded and lamps burning, they maintained the purity of chastity in their bodies, and the light of truth shone brightly in their actions. Among these revered individuals, the blessed Medard and Gildard stand out, emulating both the cunning of serpentine prudence and the innocent simplicity of doves. One of them condemned vices, while the other upheld the pure laws of virtues. They carefully avoided the corruption of wickedness and malice. Through this, they admonished those who strayed, but tempered their reproach with the wisdom of a father's prayer that was ever present in their hearts. While their judgment was strict, their hearts showed gentleness. What one erased with precision, the other healed with the grace of compassion by softening it. Thus, from fair judgment, they became the thrones of their Creator, through whom the Holy Church was governed. Even the chosen ones were often judged for their weaknesses. Thus, what the strength of one sharpened, the other's moderation warmly supported. The simplicity of the dove enhanced the cunning of the serpent, and the serpent's cunning was balanced by the dove's simplicity. Guided by goodwill, they supported anyone in distress during difficult times. To those struck by calamity, they offered consolation with well-known compassion. What they considered for themselves, they surely shared with others. They did not judge anyone prematurely, becoming all things to all people for the sake of salvation. They mourned others' losses as if they were their own troubles. Through God's favor, they cultivated many virtues from others' losses. They refused to impose on others what they did not wish for themselves, nor did they deny others what they provided for their own benefit. In God, they loved both friends and enemies, thriving in the love of God and neighbor. This is where the fullness of the prophets and the entire sum of the law reside. Through this offering, nothing is more richly presented to God. With this sacrifice, the soul dedicates itself well on the altar of the heart. So, from the devotion of goodwill, they always sought to please the highest one who searches the hearts. Though they thought humbly of themselves, they sometimes performed strong and exalted deeds beyond themselves. However, the prophetic message speaks of such people. Who are these who fly like clouds, and like doves to their windows? Isaiah 68. Blessed indeed are these confessors, always pure in speech and action, who proclaimed the sacred word with eloquence, shone through trials, and displayed virtues. Because their elevated and holy lives and preaching set them apart from earthly corruption, they were like clouds flying, matching the divine qualities of heavenly virtues. When malevolent spirits fled from possessed bodies, expelled through the power of prayer and authority given to them, they truly deserved to be aligned with heavenly powers and frequently expelled demons. Those who improved through good deeds and led among chosen brothers were fit for eternal leadership and a place among the ranks of dominion. They were neither found in bitterness nor bound by iniquity. While they lived joyfully, they were dead to Christ through renouncing the flesh and the world. As they transcended earthly thoughts, their hearts always looked ahead, and what was under their control externally served them, so that the transient things they saw never conflicted with their hearts. Therefore, they were like clouds flying, and like doves to their windows, considering fleeting things with a pure eye, moved by no desire for robbery. Moreover, they shone with equal holiness from a shared origin. Just as they were formed equally, the best path of life unified them in goodness. Nevertheless, within the womb of the world, they are noted to have been distributed by fate into unequal lives. Though allegory might be suggested, each differed in merit and grace. For one was simple, dwelling in tents, while the other engaged in worldly military service, and thus one was chosen, while the other became completely apostate and rejected. The blessed Medard and Gildard were brought into the world through a single birth, and their holiness and magnificence were celebrated equally. Born at the same moment, they shared a common confession of faith. Virtue made them companions, just as nature made them twins in an instant. With such qualities, they mirrored their parents in good deeds. The world viewed them as equals, and the Church, their spiritual mother, nurtured them in acts of piety. What stands out about them, and remains memorable through the ages, is that they achieved the glory of their consecration together and shared one episcopal throne in leading the faithful. Just as they were born together physically, they received their spiritual consecration together, equally blessed and excelling in all forms of justice without disparity. Both were sanctified under the same conditions, equally consecrated, and anointed with divine oil, ready to welcome souls for holy baptism. They both became true leaders of God at the same time. Both were made distinguished bishops on the same day, shining as true lights of the world, brighter than the sun and more splendid than the moon. One was appointed as the Bishop of Noyon, and the other as the Archbishop of Rouen. Thus, one served as suffragan, while the other, testifying to a higher office, obtained the metropolitan seat. Through their guidance, the heavenly kingdom is revealed, and by their word, the celestial gate is opened to the faithful. Through them, the kingdom of heaven endures a kind of holy struggle, and the determined sees it daily through the remedies of penance. Matthew 11:12. Having been promoted together to the office of the bishopric, they also jointly took on the role of sacred governance, so that those united by one faith might also be connected by one day in the same leadership. Furthermore, to enhance their glory, something your love might want to hear carefully occurred. Blessed confessors have left this world and are now crowned with glory and honor in heaven. Having completed their journey, they have been freed from the world's corruption and the confines of the flesh, and they now enjoy the eternal reward for their efforts. What a touching sight it is! How wonderful is the judgment of piety in their lives! They were born together, embraced faith together, were baptized together, and undertook the divine service together. They were blessed with apostolic grace and adorned with episcopal mitres, sent to lead their homeland, and became a model and example for their followers. Together, they fulfilled their pastoral duties and worked for the Lord's reward. They were faithful with what was entrusted to them, and they doubled the talents they received. They faced death together and entered the eternal kingdom together. They were celebrated victors and were welcomed into eternal glory. Together, they moved from earthly concerns to celestial ones, leaving behind all that is corruptible, and embraced the joys of eternal life. Their combined merits established a day of great celebration, always honored by angelic beings and remembered by Christians everywhere. We should continually recall and reflect on their elevated spirit, which, in finding perfect goodness, embraced it completely. For what is more perfect than that which lacks nothing, neither diminishing nor growing, neither born with a beginning nor confined by time? God always exists, embodying his essence as a supreme, ineffable, and boundless spirit. To have this fully and perfectly means to live perfectly and eternally, as it is the life of all, the living bread and eternal food of angels. When the blessed confessors achieved this with a celebrated triumph of perfection, they brought great joy to the heavenly inhabitants and offered solemn happiness to all who celebrated their feasts. We must also remember to keep it always in our minds that divine mercy raises the poor from the earth and lifts the needy from the ashes. Psalm 112, verses 7-8. They became poor in spirit to be enriched with endless treasures. This poverty was not due to a lack of wealth but was praised for its humility. Thus, the pearls that lay in the dirt have now been taken and placed in the adornment of the heavenly King. They now shine among the heavenly citizens and sparkle among the fiery stones of the eternal crown. On earth, they were once perishable, but in heaven, they are co-heirs with the angels. Having taken the trophy from the flesh, they enjoy the intimate vision of their Creator forever. By shedding their bodies, they have gained the immortal reward of the heavenly kingdom. Having laid down their earthly burden, they are clothed in the white robe of eternal immortality. As their flesh dissolves into dust, their soul finds heavenly rest. In those eternal pastures, they are sustained by the glory of eternity with all the saints. Thus, those once submerged in the depths are rescued from the pit of misery and the mire of filth. The Lord raises the poor from the earth, and divine mercy saves the blessed needy from the dirt. Regarding what we proposed, if we awaken our hopes and minds, let us see where they have set their steps, so that we may deserve to imitate their footsteps with the steps of love. Should I speak or remain silent? Supported by the strength of wisdom and fortified by the defense of justice, with prudent caution, they pursued everything that should be followed, and with a just examination, they overcame the cunning arguments of the deceitful enemy. In their well-ordered lives, they embraced moderation with all their strength, staying strong in both tough times and good times. They bravely faced every challenge. By following the path of humility, they journeyed through life with a steadfast spirit. They set great examples of patience, standing firm with unwavering perseverance on the path of truth. Strengthened by gentleness, they carried the light yoke of Christ gently and maintained the modesty in their actions that they held in their hearts as a familiar friend. So, dear brothers, we must arm ourselves with such weapons of faith, through which these blessed confessors, friends of God, and most renowned, became victors. With a humble vow, let us honor these men, worthy of all praise and honor, so that through their venerable intercession, we may experience the joys of paradise in those heavenly celebrations. Let us then observe where their hearts were set, so that we may be worthy to follow in their footsteps, with the grace of the most merciful Redeemer. Amen.
Sermon 3. On Saint Medard.
We can't overlook the life of the most blessed Saint Medard, whose virtuous deeds are renowned worldwide. While we can't cover all his actions in detail, the main reason people gather every year to celebrate his day is to commemorate his burial. This day also inspires devotion in everyone's hearts, driven by faith, as we highlight the greatness of God's saints. Even if few can truly imitate his works, may his intercession help everyone become better. So, let's begin with his origins, to ensure that no one is discouraged by obstacles of despair. Loving the Lord with a pure heart isn't hindered by differences among nations. Instead, the unity of faith shows that divine grace, available to all who seek it, should not be mistakenly considered exclusive. Medard's father, named Nectardus, came from a strong Frankish lineage and was not lacking in freedom. His mother, named Patrologia, was Roman and was free-born. Her fruitful birth, dedicated to Christ's service, was more beneficial than if she had remained a virgin and never married. Their residence and origin were in the region of Vermand. When he was young and attending school in the city, he sent a cloak his mother had made for him to be mended by a craftsman. On his way, he gave that cloak to a blind man he encountered. Similarly, while tending his parents' flock, he would give his food to any poor person he saw, enduring hunger himself and fasting throughout the day. There's also a notable mystery about his life that shouldn't go unmentioned. While still a small and innocent child in school, he told a boy named Eleutherus, a childhood friend, that he would accompany him in public service. He predicted that when he reached 30 years of age, Eleutherus would become the high priest of God. In the city of Tournai, he was appointed as the pastor of the church. Just as Saint Medardus had foretold, he exhibited a divine spirit, much like a prophet. As he frequently visited the temples, spreading the teachings of faith, he balanced his youthful years with patience. By his own will, he avoided and despised the temptations of the world, embracing the duty of a priest both in heart and appearance, excelling in the love of virtues. He quickly became well known to the bishop of the city, standing out for his conduct and sincerity of mind. He never let joy lift him too high, nor did sorrow disturb him. He was always tolerant in adversity and gentle in prosperity, putting everyone above himself with diligent obedience. He generously helped the needy with compassion, and by overcoming all vices, he ascended the path of a holy life step by step. He shunned everything harmful and chose everything precious. What more can be said? He seemed to be a guest in the world and already a possessor in heaven. As the honors of priesthood grew over time, he followed the customs of the church. He was chosen and proven for the office of priest. Thus, he began to demonstrate his holy virtues so openly that he was considered, by merit, a disciple of Christ. It happened during the autumn harvest, when the grape juice ripened and the abundance of the vintage was evident, that the boldness of a thief revealed his grace. On a certain night, when the soothing silence usually falls upon human bodies, a thief, driven by the desire to seize the fruit, went to his vineyard and broke in. Then, as he seized the loot with a cutting sword, he found himself caught within the open enclosure. The more violently he tried to escape, the less he could evade, ultimately captured by his own crime. He did not deserve to taste, nor did he find a way back in his drunken state. He could neither lose what he presumed, nor was it right for him to take what he coveted. When the vineyard owner, aware of the situation, arrived at dawn, he found the thief already caught with his stolen goods. Each held the other captive, their roles reversed. As a result, the divine justice punished the crime so thoroughly that, while picking the grapes with his own hands, the owner offered even more as a generous offering. This act reprimanded the wrongdoing and gave the thief a chance to leave. The one who had stolen honey in the night deserved similar punishment or restraint for his continued deceit. The bold thief managed to deceive the watchman with a crafty raid but couldn't escape with the flock he had stolen. The beehives, indignant, left the camp and pursued the thief everywhere, not with a gentle blessing but with the sting of their fury, until the thief's shame led him to return what he had stolen to the saint and seek forgiveness, lying prostrate. It was just that the priest in his piety did not condemn the guilty man, as the stolen goods themselves were his torment. A similar mysterious event occurred when a traveler, passing by the house, sought to steal a young bull through cunning deceit. He removed the bell from its neck, silencing it through a deceitful strategy, and left unnoticed by anyone. However, when he thought he had escaped the danger or profited from the theft, the stolen goods, locked away without obstruction, began to ring, yearning to return under the Lord's protection. Even though they were hidden carefully or secured with iron locks, the ringing exposed the crime, loudly doubling the thief's guilt. The thief, recalling past dangers with a troubled mind, fearfully returned what he had taken to the owner, not out of piety but necessity. Once the natural order was restored, the lifeless object ceased to reveal itself with sound, only being discovered when struck. Thus, the holy Methodius, a champion of Christ, is shamed for someone else's offense, even though he is not guilty. So, he offers a reward to the guilty for their fault, ensuring he doesn't return disheartened by unfulfilled ambition.